don't know if there was anything controversial in your song, but frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. It was absolutely beautiful. Eugene, you are a poet. You just don't know it. And Comrade Barghouti from occupied Palestine, I promised you a long, long time ago, in 1975 to be precise, that I would never leave the Palestinian cause alone, and that's another promise that I have kept. And I think that it is important, though we are here to talk about a local election campaign, touching inevitably on national politics, to take a moment or two only to reflect on the current international situation, for it bears on national politics and therefore also on local politics, not least in terms of the money that we have to spend as a country to tackle in a practical way the problems being faced by so many of our people in this bleak midwinter. I've got to say, and I say it to the camera now, don't tell me that you support the Palestinian people if you are then going to tell people to vote for Keir Starmer's Labour Party. That is absolutely oxymoronic. Keir Starmer's Labour Party is the most savagely pro-Israel centre-left political party in the entire world. They embarrass even their counterparts in Israel. They embarrass even the so-called Israeli Labour Party. They are the Likud, they are the Netanyahu of the centre-left political world. Israeli journalists, in particular Gideon Levy, a frequent guest of mine on my show, from the Haaretz newspaper, would be expelled from Keir Starmer's Labour Party every day of the week for the things that he writes in the Israeli press. Tony Benn would be expelled every day of the week. That's why Chris Williamson is ex-Labour MP, and that's why tens of thousands of people have either left Keir Starmer's Labour Party or actually been suspended from it or expelled from it. So if you're watching this and you consider yourself a supporter of justice in Palestine, if you tremble with indignation at the diggers and bulldozers that are this very day destroying Palestinian homes in Jerusalem, internationally recognized as occupied territory, destroying homes in occupied territory being a crime under international law, fully supported by Keir Starmer and his so-called misnamed Labour Party, then frankly you have a choice to make, and it's long past the time for you to make it. If you tremble with indignation at what has happened to the Palestinian people, then it's time to tear up Keir Starmer's Labour membership card now and do something useful instead. Or else you can be a hypocrite, you see. Or else you can be a hypocrite. You can wear your Palestinian badge, and then it comes to an election and you ask people to vote for Keir Starmer's Labour Party. That's hypocrisy. If you're content to be a hypocrite, then stay there. Stay there and fight. What are they talking about? Fight. If you did fight, you'd be kicked out. So the truth is, you're not fighting. You're lying dormant under the permafrost, hoping that like a woolly mammoth, one day you'll be able to stagger to your feet. It's preposterous nonsense, and in your heart you already know it. But the main feature of the international situation that I want to touch on is even more serious than that. I've lived a long life. I hope to live longer, but I've been in politics for more than 50 years, 36 years in the Labour Party, almost 30 years in the House of Commons. There has never been a more dangerous moment since the end of the Cold War, and there's never been a more dangerous moment, in my opinion, it's a controversial opinion, since the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1961 than the one that we are living in now. The fact that what I've just said comes as a surprise to you is because the mass media on which so many people rely are deliberately concealing that fact from you. We currently, this country where there are 5 million children living in poverty, where the litany of misery adumbrated by Lauren and by Reuben at the beginning of this meeting in the second city of our rich country. We are currently sailing aircraft carriers, battleships, destroyers, fielding nuclear-capable aircraft and sending soldiers to the border of not one, but 2 nuclear-armed superpowers, challenging them to a fight. Are these people insane? Both China and Russia, never mind the 2 of them together, could turn this entire country into ash, into toast, in an hour of an afternoon. And we're parking our tanks, our airplanes, our warships on their frontier and calling them a threat to peace. I mean, there's something maniacal about this. You send your army to their border and then accuse them of being a threat to peace. Anybody who believes that is an idiot. Unfortunately, we have idiots in our midst. Most of them in the House of Commons for a start. Most of them broadcasting on the television for a start. Most of them writing in our newspapers for a start. But we have them also amongst our public. I'm sorry to say that. I see it on social media. I hear it in the street. Oh, China, what are we going to do about China? What are you going to do about China? Find a house for that guy lying by the side of the road first before you start lecturing China on what it should be doing. Find a job for the millions that are unemployed or underemployed. Find a decent school. Cut the waiting lists in your NHS. Find beds for people that are lying on trolleys or can't even get into the A&E this evening before you start thinking about China. Whereas Chris Williamson said, whatever else you think about them, they've lifted 800 million people out of poverty in the last 30 years. How many have we lifted out of poverty in the last 30 years? We've put millions into poverty over the last 30 years. So keep this in mind. If we've got money to burn, setting fire to other people's countries, we've got money to keep our old age pensioners warm through this bitter winter this year and every other year. The money we're wasting on weapons and war is money that's being taken out of the pockets of the taxpayers in Britain and spent not on the needs of the people in Britain, but on threatening and confronting other people whose business is nothing to do with us. I could speak to you all night about the Crimea, about Taiwan. Trust me, I could. And I'd persuade you. But that's not why I'm here. And in any case, it's not our business what happens in the Crimea or in Taiwan. We have more than enough business to attend to here in our own country. We love this country. That's a difference between us and many on the so-called left. They're never done rubbishing this country. They call it a septic isle and all these other insults. They wanted us to remain under the rule of unelected bureaucrats in Brussels. We believe in British sovereignty and independence, not because that's enough in itself. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. It's not sufficient, but it is necessary. We now have the possibility in our country to strike an independent course that can resolve these miserable problems that my comrades in Birmingham have been describing this evening. And we must take it. You see, Lauren, you asked the rhetorical question earlier. Does this sound like the policies of a Labour Party standing up for the working class? And of course, the answer to your rhetorical question was no. But it isn't just that Labour doesn't stand up for the working class, it's that it pretends to. That's the real rub. I'm going to speak mainly about Labour this evening, not because I support the Tories. We expect the Tories to be pocket-picking, champagne-swilling, corrupt, dastardly elements. We expect that. That's what they are. A scorpion stings because it is a scorpion. The Tories are scorpions. That's why they sting. Our problem is with the wolf in sheep's clothing. That is the so-called Labour Party. And that's why I'm going to concentrate my fire on them this evening. Last time I was in Birmingham, I went to Smithick. I stood in the street, under the street sign, where the great Malcolm X walked and stood just weeks, I think, before he was murdered. It now turns out by the intelligence services of the United States. He talked about this wolf in sheep's clothing, the man who poses as a liberal, as opposed to the man who is open about his attitudes towards you. He preferred them, so do I, to the wolf in sheep's clothing, because the wolf in sheep's clothing has a purpose: to divert you along with as many sheep as he can lead in entirely the wrong direction. We say that a Labour Council that cannot give its children a free ride on the bus and would rather send them to court in order to get to school, a Labour Council that is sitting on £500 million in reserves when its tenants are living in the conditions that Reuben explained so powerfully, is not a Labour Council at all. It's only pretending to be a Labour Council, and it must be beaten. It must be driven out of power. Now, we are not pretending that after just 2 years we can take control of the Birmingham City Council. We are saying, if you give us your votes and your active support, we can elect a raft of people in there that will be making the case that we are making here. And if that case is made, then we will become stronger and stronger at the expense of the wolf in sheep's clothing. And finally, we will drive that wolf away. That's our task. Not just here in Birmingham, but everywhere in the country. We believe that the 100 years, it's actually more than 100 years now, that the Labour Party has existed is long enough to conclude not only that they are not capable, but they have no intention of transforming our country in the way that the mass of our people need. We don't ask for much. Reuben laid it out. We say everybody has the right to a decent and decently paid unionized job. What's wrong with that? Who's got an argument against that? And that everyone needs to work, by the way. We're not a party of shirkers or leg swingers. Everyone needs to work. But they need to be able to get a decent and decently paid and trade unionized job. Everybody has the right to a clean environment. All these hypocrites that flew in their private jets to Glasgow just a month or so ago with their 27-car cavalcades of gigantic limousines. That's all they talked about, wasn't it? A decent, clean environment. I'm in favour of it. But let's start with rat-infested council houses in Birmingham. Let's start with cockroach-infested buildings in Birmingham. It's not that we're poor. We could do it. Birmingham Council could do it. They could take a small piece of their £500 million reserve and wipe out every rat and every cockroach in this city. Easily. Easily. It's not that they can't do it, it's that they won't do it because they don't believe that their own tenants are worthy of that expenditure. Well, you know, if you let people take you for granted, they'll take you for granted. If they think you're going to vote Labour anyway, why should they change? If you're a glutton for punishment, why shouldn't they continue to punish you? But if, as Chris Williamson said, you're going to stand up and say, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take this anymore, that's when things will begin to change. And that's what I have driven 5 hours to be here this evening, and will drive 5 hours back at the end of this meeting to say to you, not to entertain you, though I hope that the meeting has been entertaining. Not so you can buy one of my books, although I hope you will. I came here to make you angry, because nothing will be achieved until our people get angry. I think they are actually increasingly angry, but in an unformed way, and sometimes against the wrong targets. We want our people to be righteously angry, because only righteous anger in the face of all these problems can change the situation fundamentally. It's not that getting one Workers' Party councillor in Birmingham, or 5 or 10, will change the world. It won't. But it will be a step in the right direction. And I hope that you'll take that step in May 2022. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, George, and I don't really like following you, so I'm going to be as quick as possible. The final item on tonight's agenda is to meet the candidates for the Workers' Party for Birmingham in May 2022. George, do you mind standing down at the front so we can all have a nice photo with you? And I hope as well, George, that we can get you back sometime before the May election to give us some of your campaigning experience.
Yeah.
So, if you wouldn't mind coming to the front and having a photo taken, Paul Scrivens, who will be standing for Boswell Heath West. Come on, Paul. Ruben Lawrence, who will be standing for Bordsley Green.
Where are you standing? Excellent.
Edward Renyard, who will be standing in Highgate and Bordsley.
Highgate.
Highgate and Bordsley.
Highgate and Bordsley, which is, Highgate is where we're currently standing
Excellent.
right now, is it? Yeah. I mean, we're in Highgate, but I think the ward, like... Eugene Egan, who will be standing for Alum Rock.
Thank you.
Tom O'Neill, who will be standing for Sparkbrook and Boswell Heath East. Thank you, Tom. Also in Sparkbrook and Boswell Heath East is Catherine Kramer, but I think she's... Is she still here?
Left. No.
She's left. Newborn baby and all that.
We could forgive that.
And lastly, Dr. Phil Bevan, who will be standing for Brandwood and Kings Heath.
Bravo.
Come on, Phil.
There's a doctor in the house.
And I myself will also be standing in Brandwood and Kings Heath with
Wow.
Phil.